Are you out there looking for a build that does not run earthquakes? How about something where you can take a gigantic hammer and slam it into the enemy as fast as you possibly can? Well, I have the build for you. This is the Deathblow Barbarian. Like I said, we are running no quakes whatsoever. This is a very pricey build though. As you can see, we're running 4 different mythic uniques. Each piece of gear plays a very vital role in how this build gets put together. So if you do not have any of these pieces of gear, it will not work. You can try and substitute a couple things in, but I definitely do not suggest it. So before you swap into this build, make sure you check the link in the description of this video, click on the planner, and look at the gear requirements. It is pricey and specific, and it is almost all uniques. Because this build is not running quakes, this build will not be pushing into the high tiers of the pits, but it's going to be fun to see exactly how far we could take this build. I'm going to show you a run of a pit 100, and then we're going to hop into the skills. Who's over there still? Okay, nope, they're all still here. Where are these groups of monsters here? Okay, there we go. Barrier boys is never good. The hardest part about getting into these runs is the hey, thanks for the follow, Jesse. It's getting to the bosses, because the bosses, like you saw, you do a lot more damage with the against bosses. This double super elite right off the bat. I'd also like to run away from me. Why am I losing Fury now? I wasn't losing Fury last time. I shouldn't have stayed here. I should have just moved right away. My god, another super elite? Are you kidding me? Hey, what's going on, Bruce? How's it going today? Oh my god, it didn't cast. Normally it does, because they normally update your gear and aspects and stuff, so it normally does go legacy. But at the end of the season, they normally update gear, so they make it go, all of the stuff that they've updated, aspects and stuff, all becomes legacy gear. Really excited. Got to tier 4 before it went to bed last night. Congratulations. That's amazing. Keep on following. Oh, wait, never mind. All right, we're not fighting you. We're going down. We're going down. What do we got? Ah, this isn't bad. I get. Oh, it's snakes and a super elite right away. And this is the worst map. Oh no, I hate this one. Also, I don't think the monsters should attack your mercenaries. I don't know what you guys think about that, but like, really don't think that they should be attacking your mercenaries. Like, for them to just stop attacking you and to just run over, unless your mercenaries have a taunt, like right here does. Then it's kind of a pain that they just stop. I'm definitely seeing higher numbers on these regular elites too. We're gonna try and just pull this super elite with me. Gonna come this way. No. Gonna be a jerk about it. Big old jerk face. No, he's coming. Okay. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Come on. Go for a ride. Want a big group of monsters here. Need all of the monsters to come with us here. Okay, let's post up in this corner right here. Nice not having to worry about, like, dying. It's really nice. It's just like, it's so tanky. Oopsies. We're at 100,000 life. Do you guys see that? 100,000. 100K. Cool 100. No, it goes up to 100K. Blast wave! Heck yeah. Oh yeah, we're smashing this one. We are smashing this one. You see how strong the blast wave is? It is hilarious. This is the dead end? Okay. We're gonna have plenty of time. Plenty of time. This is gonna be a very great clear. I know, of course it does. Of course it does. Look at this. 6 minutes and 44 seconds. And a great boss. And a great boss. $16.4 billion. We went from starting off the night doing what? Like 3 billion? 2 billion on bosses? Get some 15.8 billion. Beautiful. 12.9. And we're gonna do even more when we get into the Slaying Strikes range again at the bottom. Up. Yeah, we're gonna have plenty of time. Deathblow is here, and the gear is not even Masterworks done. Masterworks is not done yet. We got a long way to go. Very excited about this. $15.6. Come on, let's see something big. See some big ones. 15. We're about to hit the Slaying Strikes range. I'm gonna change this a little bit. I'm actually gonna do Frenzy to do attack speed, not just ranks. Then I think I'll like tap out on my attack speed here, and we just keep up 3 stacks. Right. 4.5 minutes left? So that's the run. Let's hop into the skills. We're going to start at the top. We're going to be actually going into Frenzy all the way down through Battle Frenzy. Frenzy is going to have 3 stacks. You'll be able to see the timer on the stacks as you use Frenzy. When you get 3 stacks of Frenzy, you're going to gain 18% increase attack speed. You're going to need all the attack speed that you possibly can get with this build. 1 point into Pressure Point so we can unlock Warpath. After overpowering, we're going to deal additional damage for 4 seconds. 3 points into Imposing Presence. And because this is an overpower build, we are going to be stacking as much maximum life as we possibly can. It's going to increase our damage and our survivability. Because of how much life we're going to be running and how much we heal, we do not need to take any of the defensive abilities that you normally would be taking. Rallying Cry is actually going to be incredibly important for this build because you need all the Fury generation that you can get. That's why we put 5 points here. We go all the way down through Tactical Rallying Cry because every single time that this is cast, we gain that 20 Fury and additional resource generation. All of that is going to play into being able to spam Deathblow. We're going to be going 3 points into Belligerence. Because we're going to be using Frenzy, every time that we cast Frenzy, we're going to be gaining additional damage from using a basic skill. 5 points into Warcry, all the way down through Power Warcry. This is going to just give us some additional damage when there's a bunch of enemies around, and we're going to pull as much as we possibly can because we can withstand all of the hits. 3 points into Booming Voice. This is going to increase the duration of your shouts. 1 point into Aggressive Resistance so we can unlock Prolific Fury. We're going to put 3 points into Prolific Fury. This is going to give us additional Fury generation while we're berserking. 3 points into Pit Fighter. This gives us damage reduction and damage to close enemies. 3 points into Slaying Strikes. This gives us additional damage to healthy and injured enemies. Healthy is anything above 80%. Injured enemies is anything below 35% life. We're going to be maxing out Deathblow here. This is going to be our main source of damage. We're going to get Enhanced Deathblow for 200% increased damage to bosses. This is actually a really great bossing build. When you get to the bosses, that's when you start hitting the really, really big numbers. We're going to be taking Fighter's Deathblow. If Deathblow damages at least 1 enemy, you're going to gain 20 Fury. Without this, we will not be able to spam Deathblow. Every single little bit of Fury generation that we can get, we need it so that Deathblow does not have any Fury loss whatsoever. 1 point into Thick Skin so we can unlock Counteroffensive. This is going to give us damage when we are above 50% of our maximum life is Fortify. 3 points into Heavy Handed. This gives us additional critical strike damage when we're using a 2-handed weapon, which we're going to be doing. 3 points into Wallop. Whenever we use a bludgeoning weapon, we're going to deal additional damage to vulnerable or stunned enemies. We're going to be using the 2-handed mace because we're going to be using that for Deathblow, so we'll be gaining this advantage here from the damage. 3 points into Brute Force. We're going to deal additional overpower damage when using a 2-handed weapon. We're going to go 3 points into Invigorating Fury. We're going to heal for 12% of our maximum life every time that we spend 100 Fury. Deathblow costs 100 Fury with the way that this is set up. So that means that every single time that we cast Deathblow, and if you watch the run, we cast it very, very quickly, we are going to heal for 12% of our life. The healing is absolutely through the roof. 5 points into Wrath of the Berserker here, all the way down through Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. This is going to give us damage, berserking, fury generation, as well as just fury whenever we use it. And then for the final skill, we're going to be taking Unbridled Rage. This is very specific and very important. We need the cost of Deathblow to actually be doubled. We have to have that because we need to be spending as much fury as we possibly can to guarantee ourselves overpower as often as possible. When we get into the gear section, we'll talk about exactly why. So that's the skills. Let's go over the Paragon board. When we're doing Paragon boards this season, make sure that you're following a guide that doesn't fill out the entire board without allowing you to unlock every single glyph and every single legendary node. I'll have 2 different variants in this build. One will be a regular one with about 200 points spent. The other one will be a full Paragon board. Fill out the 200 one first, and then go through and fill out the rest of the points. It's very important to unlock all of them first. Inside the starter board, we're going to be running Ire, 10% damage reduction while we're berserking. And then on the very bottom, we're going to get a multiplicative number to close enemies. This happens when you hit level 46 on your glyphs. You gain an increased damage as a multiplier on every single glyph. They go from being yellow to orange, which means that they go from rare to legendary. In the next board, we're going to be running Bonebreaker. Every 12 seconds, your next skill is going to be guaranteed to overpower. Whenever we overpower, our ultimate skill is going to deal additional damage. Now, we're not actually stacking ultimate damage here, but that guaranteed overpower is very nice for this build. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Wrath. What's very important about this is that your skills critically strike, they're going to generate fury for you. You need them to generate fury because, like I said, we need as much fury generation as we possibly can get. The fun part about this build is you need 0 critical strike chance whatsoever on your gear in order to critically strike every single time. We will be critically striking 100% of the time with this build without running any critical strike, and we'll talk about that when we get into the gear section. We're also going to be dealing additional critical strike damage here as a multiplier. In the next board, we're going to be running Blood Rage. What this is going to do, it's going to take 10% of our damage while berserking bonus, and it's going to convert that into a multiplicative number. So if you go over to your stats here, and we go all the way down to the bottom, I'm actually over right now. I'm running 520%, which means that if it actually had no cap on it, I would have 52%, but that's not the way that this works. It caps out at 45%. So with that node, I'm going to be running 45% as a multiplier. The top part where we're killing a bleeding enemy gives us berserking is actually not really important for this build. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Might. You're going to deal 8% increased damage while wielding a 2-handed weapon, and we're also going to get an increased multiplier to healthy enemies, which is anybody above 80%. In the next board, we're going to be running Decimator. Each time you make an enemy vulnerable, you're going to deal 20% increased damage to them. And then when you overpower a vulnerable enemy, which will be once every 2 to 3 attacks, we're going to gain an additional 20% increased damage for a total of 40. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Dominate. This gives us a bunch of overpower damage. Every 15 seconds, your next attack will overpower. We're also going to gain 20% increased multiplicative overpowered damage from the legendary power. In the final board here, we're going to be running Carnage. While berserking, critical strikes are going to increase our attack speed. This is going to be really important because we need to attack as fast as we can to generate as much fury as we can to do more overpowers. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Crusher. While wielding a mace, you deal 20% increased overpowered damage. And we're also going to get an increase as a multiplier to straight damage. For the gear in this build, like I said, this is very specific. We cannot replace any part of this in order to make this work. We're going to be running the Crown of Lucian. The reason that we're running the Crown of Lucian, each time you cast a skill with a resource cost, you gain 15% increased damage, and resource cost is increased by 30% for 4 seconds. That stacks up to 5 times. That means we increase the resource cost of Deathblow by 150%. That is very important to this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get through the gear. For the chest piece, we're going to be running the Shroud of False Death. This unlocks a lot of the passive that we were able to skip that we normally would be taking because this gives us +1 to all of our passives. If you don't have this on, you're going to have to completely rework your entire skill tree. So this is an incredibly important piece to this build. For the gloves, we're going to be running Intercom, and this is our only legendary piece of gear. What Intercom is going to do, it's going to give us 39% increased damage while we're standing still. If you watch the run, the point of this build is to pull everything into a group that stands in front of you, and then you use Deathblow and hit them. We're going to gain that while we're standing still and attacking. Because we're running so much strength this season, we actually are going to be a little overcap on the damage while berserking. So you can use critical strike damage instead of damage while berserking here. I think I would end up just under cap. So you're going to have to play it by ear and figure out where your gear is. Just make sure you're at that 45% in the Blood Rage node. For the affixes, we're going to be running max life, attack speed, ranks to core skills. And for the tempers, if you follow along with the planner, you're going to run concussion and damage while berserking. You can add berserk duration, but berserk duration is not necessary because we're going to have berserking up 100% of the time. For the pants, we're going to be running to Bolt's Will. Every time that we become unstoppable, we're going to deal additional damage. We're also going to gain 50 of our primary resources, and that is also multiplied by all of the fury generation that we have. Rallying Cry is going to be our source of Unstoppable as well as Wrath of Berserker, and Rallying Cry is actually going to get casted on auto cast even when it's on cooldown. And we're going to be doing that through running Yen's Blessing. Casting a skill has a 60% chance to trigger a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. That can occur once every 8 seconds. If you look right here, the only skills that we have are basic skills and our ultimate skill. That means that when Rallying Cry is on cooldown and we're casting a regular skill, this is going to have a 60% chance to recast Rallying Cry. That's how we're going to have our 100% uptime on our Unstoppable and give us additional resource generation. For the weapon, we're going to be running Overkill. This has huge ranks to Deathblow, so that's super important. This also is going to create a shockwave that's going to go out in front of your Deathblow so that it hits enemies. It's our only source of AoE. It is a small one, but it is something. For the weapon, we're going to be running the Third Blade. This build will not run without the Third Blade. So if you do not have it, wait. You have to go into the Infernal Hordes in order to find it. What this does, your weapon mastery skills are now core skills. They have no cooldown, they cost Fury. The dealing of the damage is very important too. They're going to deal 70% more damage. Fury cost is going to be reduced for each additional rank or charge. What that means is if you look at Deathblow, at the very top here, it says Weapon Mastery and Core. We now have weapon mastery skills as core skills. Same thing with Steel Grasp. If you notice in the skill tree, we did not take Steel Grasp as a skill. We can now select it because we're running the Ring of Starless Sky, and we also have ranks to core skills on our gloves. We can select any core skill that we want, even if we haven't put any points into it. So we were able to put Steel Grasp on our bar, and we're able to spam Deathblow without any cooldown. For the other weapon, we're going to be running the Doombringer. This is incredibly important for maximum life. We want to be having as much life for this build as possible. The reason that we're running so much life is if you look at where it says overpower damage is further increased at the moment of impact based on your maximum life and fortify amount. The more life we have, the more fortify we have, the more damage we do. Doombringer definitely helps with that. For the slashing weapon, we're going to be running the Grandfather. This is a great source of maximum life for us. It's going to give us some critical strike damage. For the first ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Red Fury. This is how we gain a critical strike chance of 100%. After spending 100 Fury within 3 seconds, your next death blow within 5 seconds is a guaranteed critical strike, and it gains a critical strike damage bonus. So that means that when we spend 100 Fury, our next death blow is going to be a guaranteed critical strike. Very, very important to this build because we have to have that critical strike chance to activate the Wrath Glyph as much as we possibly can. For the other ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Starless Sky. After spending primary resources 5 times, we're going to deal 50% increased damage, and our skills will cost 50% less. Now that seems kind of counterintuitive because we've been trying to stack as much Fury cost as we possibly can for this build. We are going to be stacking so much that if we don't have the Ring of Starless Sky on to cut that down in half, we will not be able to spam Deathblow. The additional Fury cost from our key passive and from the Crown of Lucian, then cut that in half, is exactly enough to keep this build running, and to make sure that we are spamming our overpowers as much as possible. How are we spamming overpowers as much as possible? We are going to be running the Banished Lord's Talisman. If you spend 275 of your primary resources, your next core skill, which now Deathblow is a core skill, is going to guaranteed overpower and does an additional 60% increase overpower damage. That means that every 3 attacks, and sometimes every 2 attacks, we're going to be dealing overpower damage guaranteed. As you can see, my masterworking is not done yet. We've already cleared pit 100. We are pushing to 105. It's definitely doable. We might be able to get a little bit higher. I'm very excited to see that. Follow along with the planner if you want to see where to put all of the masterworking crits. The most important ones are going to be there. For the gems, Going to have rubies in the armor. That's super important that you put rubies in the armor and not the runes. You want to gain as much strength as you possibly can. Strength is a huge multiplier to your damage no matter what build you're running. For the weapons, we're going to be running emeralds for critical strike damage inside of the dual wield weapons. For your runes, we're going to be running Tam Zal. This gives you 20% maximum life for 6 seconds when you cast a skill 12 times. As you saw, we attack very quickly, so we're going to have that 20% up all the time. For the other runes, we're going to be running Pak Om. Spend 600% of your maximum resources. It's going to invoke the Barbarian Warcry. As you saw, we don't have Warcry on our bar, but we did put a lot of points into it. We still get all of the bonuses from Warcry by casting it with our runes. 600% seems like a lot, but when you multiply by all of the Fury costs, we spend 600% incredibly fast. For the Occult Gems, we're going to be running Duststone. For each of your auras and hexes, you're going to deal additional 2.5% increased damage. There is another option if you wanted to. I'm going to be testing it out a little bit. Phantom Sting might be a great option. You get 15x against X enemies for your overpowered damage, so that might be an option for you also. We're going to be running Friend of the Bog. You're going to gain 8% primary core stat, which is your strength, and 10% maximum life. You're also going to be unhindered, which means you can move through enemies freely without them stopping you. And for the final witch power, we're going to be running Elder Sigil. Your weapon mastery skills are going to deal 25% increased direct damage to hex enemies. For your witch powers, we're going to be running the Cycle as your primary unique, and then we're going to be running Aura Specialization. That's the reason that we have this gigantic aura around us. If we take it off, it goes down. When we put it back on, this is why we see that gigantic increase. That means that you're going to just affect more enemies with that aura. For the next witch power, we're going to be running Soul Harvest. This is going to increase our strength. The more enemies that we have around us, and you can pull a gigantic group with this build because you are so tanky, you will not die. You pull a giant group, you use any skill with a cooldown, and you gain a ton of strength. It's a really, really great boost to your damage. We're going to be running Hex of Whispers. This is super strong. It's going to hit 6 times, and then it comes back to you. It fortifies you, and it cleanses all negative effects on you. That is so good, because when you get to a boss in the pits, and maybe one of the echoes hits you, or you're fighting Lilith, and she hits you with one of those abilities that puts a debuff on you, this can actually remove those debuffs. There's no other ability in the game that can remove those debuffs. The next one, we're going to be running Aura of Siphoning. This is why there's that blue aura around us. Every time that we damage an enemy, we're going to heal for 1% of our maximum life. The final one is going to be Shaken Soul. Anytime that we deal damage with any of our witch powers, all of those enemies are going to be vulnerable. For the Expertise, we're going to be running your two-handed axe technique. What this does is that even though we're not running a two-handed axe, it still gives us the benefit of having a two-handed axe on. That's 10% increased multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. For the Mercenaries, we're going to be running Rahir. Rahir is going to be a source of Fortify for us. Because we're taking the different rune in Rallying Cry, we're not going to be getting Fortify from Rallying Cry. So using Rahir is going to help us with that. We're also going to go all the way down through Mocking Lore. Whenever Rahir taunts, we're going to deal 15% increased damage to them. And for the opportunity, we're going to be running Variana. We're going to be running Bloodthirst. This is going to give us 10% increased attack speed every time that she comes out. So this is just going to be a little boost to our attack. For the gameplay loop for this, it's pretty simple. You're going to make sure that you use Rallying Cry. You're going to keep your 3 stacks of Frenzy up. You can see it right down here. This is the timer. You can tell by whatever your latency is how to keep that up. If I let it get a little bit too close and it looks like it's still up, it'll fall off. So do it based on whatever your latency is. Keep your 3 stacks of your Frenzy up. You can pop Wrath of the Berserker, and then you're just going to cast Deathblow. Make sure that you use Rallying Cry on cooldown. You can use your Steel Grasp whenever you have enough Fury in order to pull enemies in, but you just spam Deathblow. You want to pull into a corner or wherever you can get your back to a wall, and then that's going to be where you attack from. That way, all of the enemies are in front of you. You have your overkill that shoots that cone out in front. You want that cone to be hitting all the enemies. It is not a lot of damage, but it is something that will help. If you see, it's doing 800, 900 million damage. So any little bit of damage to any little bit of AoE is going to help us with this build. But that's pretty much it. You want to just run like that. If you run low on Fury for whatever reason, you use Frenzy. And as you mix Frenzy into this build, we generate enough Fury that you won't run out. Now, if we take off the Ring of Starless Sky, because we are stacking as much as we possibly could, as soon as we get high enough up onto your stacks, Deathblow costs 200 Fury. We don't even have 200 Fury. That's why running the Ring of Starless Sky is so important for this build. And if we take off the Crown of Lucian, we do not overpower very often if we take off the Crown of Lucian. There's very little orange numbers that are popping up. As soon as you put that back on, you're going to see overpowers all over the place. So that's why it's going to be very important to run this build like it is set up. There's a whole lot of thought that went into how you did it. If you want to replace the Doombringer, you can, but you're going to lose a lot of damage because you're going to be losing out on that maximum life. So that's the build. Hit up the comments with how high you push in the pits with this. I'm super excited for everybody to hop on and try this out. I'm live every night. I would love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.